Seeing that it's 6 o'clock, I'm going to call to order the Village Board of Trustees meeting for Monday, May 5th, 2025. So, Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. You over there, Ronnie?
Yeah, let's do this. All right, roll call. President Service.
Here.
Trustee Bannon.
Here.
Bongard. Here. Michael Kraus. Here. Tasmar.
Here.
Ward. Here. And Ziegler.
Here.
You have a quorum.
And was the meeting posted?
It was posted as required by law.
You have the public participation part. Public participation allows citizens to be heard on any agenda and non-agenda item. The public may also comment during the public participation section of each item. The village board shall make no decision or consideration of action of citizen comments for items not on the agenda, except to refer the matter to the village administrator for administrative consideration or to schedule the matter for board consideration at a later date. Anyone here wishing to make comments on non-agenda items?
I don't have anyone signed up tonight.
None? We will move on to the consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member requests it, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered for the first item after the approval of the consent agenda. And we have two items. First is the village board minutes from April 21st, and then the April 2025 check register.
I make a motion to approve the consent.
Second it. Got the second there.
Oh, Deb,
Yep, okay. All right, I'm gonna keep asking.
I was waiting for you to ask.
Okay, I'm gonna keep asking.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Village President's report. I'd like to say that I don't want to steal all of Drew's thunder, but we had a good time planting 31 trees out on the west side for Arbor Day. So that was the other Saturday. So that's all I have for President's report. Staff reports.
Yeah, I'll just say a few words about Arbor Day. I did want to put it up on the screen, but we had a little technical difficulties logging in. I wasn't able to get my email on there. I just had a few slides with pictures, but no big deal. But yes, we planted 31 trees. We had some community volunteers came out and helped. Everything went off without a hitch. We had 3 volunteers from Wolf coming in behind us to mulch. It was fantastic. All 31 trees came from species that represented no more than, I believe, 5% of the total canopy. So it's not common stuff. It's really cool. Had some gum trees and katsuras and swamp oaks. It was gorgeous, gorgeous trees, gorgeous day. And the staff showed up and they were fantastic and really helped us get through everything. So it was a great day and a good event. And I think this might be a good way to do things in the future for trees for us. So, yeah.
Drew, if you want, I've got.
Oh, you got it. Oh, fantastic.
I mean, I get bigger. Okay.
Yep, that's the last tree that went in.
Sorry, the thing's in the way, but.
Oh, it's okay. There's not much to it. I mean, oh yes, we got our Tree City USA recognition. That was cool in the beginning. So we'll be keeping that up every year.
Oh. Sorry. Here's everybody.
Fabulous leader giving a speech. Yep, it's a short and sweet. Great event.
The other staff reports.
I put in our DNR and Dane County stewardship grants for the parkland on Carolina Street. So hopefully we'll be hearing back in the next few months about those. think that's just about it.
I have nothing to it.
Nothing.
Thank you. So now we have a presentation from our guests here from UW-Platteville, correct? You guys did a study for the West Side Trail and Bridge project. Welcome. Appreciate you coming. And you can take the podium. Introduce yourselves, please.
Well, my name is Eli Roofer.
I'm Laura Bacco.
And I'm Dane Zingzine.
And I'm Alexis Havernoll.
Just up here a second.
Okay, perfect.
So obviously stated before, we did the trail and bridge project on the west side of town. So our agenda is kind of going to go over the project background, talk about some research and data collection that we did, some different alternatives that we came up with, some final designs and a construction schedule and cost estimate that we came up with, and then we'll end with a conclusion and our recommendations.
So first with the project background, just to recap. No, okay.
It's some minutes.
Okay, got it.
I'm gonna get a delay, sorry.
Don't worry, it's not your technology, it's ours.
So just a recap of the project background, it is up by the new subdivision development, primarily on the east and west side. The goal is to connect to the existing trail, which will require a bridge across the Sugar River. So the existing conditions and need for the project, currently there is no trail system on the east side of the village, and there are no trails that connect the north and the west part together. We did see the existing pedestrian bridge when we came to do our original site visit, and so that will be used for further design of our proposed bridge. And then the west side of the village is expanding, as we said before, and then there will be a proposed park in the new subdivision. And this park will be used as the trailhead for this new trail that will cross the river. And in general, the goal is to just expand the trail system in the village.
So when talking with Gabe, we did have a couple objectives that we wanted to basically complete with this project. One was we wanted to design a main trail that was ADA accessible, design some offshoot trails, and then design a bridge crossing the Sugar River, as well as building in a construction phase and cost estimate. We obviously did have some constraints. One was that the trail and bridge needed to be ADA accessible. We wanted to minimize damage to nature and have minimal maintenance be required. We know that the new trail needed to connect to the existing trail, maximum budget of 3.1 million, and then obviously to design in construction phases.
And then constraints provided by the environment are just the location of wetlands and the floodplain. So now we'll go into the research and data collection we had to do. So to start, this is the wetland map for the village. The main area of concern is the space between the river and then Belrose Street. Primarily the part that the DNR has classified as an open water wetland. This would influence future design for the trail and would lead us to incorporate a boardwalk section. Another aspect was, apologies, another aspect was where the floodplain and floodway were. To define, the floodplain is any area that will be covered by water during the 100-year flood event. And then the floodway is any space that will carry the water at high velocities during the 100-year event. So once again, the area of interest is around the river, between the river and Belrose Street. And this information was important to design the bridge foundations. So with this, I then created a hydraulic report using the flood event information that I was able to find using StreamStats, which I then created a HECRES model, which is a modeling software for rivers and installing bridges in rivers. And then the flood velocities would influence the bridge design, as I said before. So then this is the information from StreamStats. With this, I was able to get the flows that would occur during the 100, 50, and 24-year flood events, which this is what I put into HECRES to get these results. And then, as I said before, the main thing that we wanted to get out of this was the channel velocities, which would influence the bridge design. So as I mentioned a little bit before with the wetland, because of the open water classification, it was determined that a boardwalk would be best in this area, as it would be least destructive to the area, since we wouldn't be having to really fill in any of the area. And this design was influenced by the Schmeekley Preserve at UW-Stevens Point, which is where we got this 3D rendering. Their design is different than a typical boardwalk because it's a more ski-like design. Rather than wooden posts that are driven into the ground, it more sits on top of it like snowshoes. And when speaking to the reserve, they said that this allowed for easier maintenance, as during the frost heave, that they could go in and just kind of lift up sections and then re-level it rather than having to dig out large portions.
So for the bridge, there are a few design manuals that we use throughout the design. Here, maybe a second, but the first one being the Wisconsin Department of Transportation Bridge Manual, particularly Chapter 37, which was about pedestrian bridges. And then this one frequently reached out, or it had you look at the ASCO LRFD bridge design spec, and that was used for more design loadings and stuff like that. For the wood design on the bridge, we used NDS specification and supplement. And then for the steel design, we used the AISC steel construction manual. And then we also looked at the existing pedestrian bridge, which is downstream, and provided to us, or we got, we collected was the soil boring report from the bridge, as well as the bridge plan set, which we used in our designs.
Now we will be going over the alternatives that we first looked into before selecting a final design. So with the primary trail, it was split by the east and west side of the Sugar River, just because these areas were different and this made the most sense. There are two alternatives for each side. The goal of the alternatives on the west side is to connect the park to the bridge, and on the east side is to connect the bridge to the existing trail. And then both alternatives on the east side have a boardwalk portion. So this is the preliminary trail layout for the alternatives. On the west side, the yellow trail is alternative A, and it's more of a curved trail. This would provide a more scenic route as they come around down to the river. However, it is larger, so it does have a larger impact on the natural environment. Also, because of the odd angle that it meets the river at, it would also then meet the bridge at an odd angle, which could lead to some issues with maintenance vehicles. And then the red trail is alternative B, and this is a straight trail from the park to the bridge. It is minimal in its damage to the environment, and then it would be easier for maintenance as it's a straight shot. And then on the east side, the green trail is alternative A, and it's offset from the river bank by about 120 feet just for safety concerns, so that no one would be getting too close to the river while they're on the trail. It's a longer trail because it does curve around. It meets the existing trail about halfway, a bit more closer to the lake than alternative B. Alternative B is once again more of a straight trail from the bridge to the existing park. It connects up to the existing trail by Belleville Street, which is kind of what we discussed when we had our site visit. However, it does have a longer boardwalk portion, so that would cause it to be more expensive than the green one. So this is the decision matrix that we used. In general, with the decision matrix, we came up with criteria that were both discussed in our kickoff meeting, but also just in general design considerations, particularly the construction costs, the safety, and then the disruption to the natural habitat. All alternatives were then scored on how they met these criteria, with 5 being the best. They were then weighted based on their importance, both determined by us, but also working with Gabe during our midterm meeting. And then with the weighted scoring, we were able to determine the optimum alternative. And for both sides of the Sugar River, alternative B was determined.
Next, for the bridge alternatives, there was a few constraints that we had to consider. The first one being that it needed to cross the river at the narrowest part. This meant that the main span of the bridge needed to be at least 140 feet long. Also, the same main span needed to be above the 100-year flood elevation to allow for clearance and for debris to pass in the event of a flood. And also the design needs to follow ADA compliance. These are the 3 bridge alternatives that we prepared. The first one, alternative A, is a steel beam bridge. Alternative B is a pre-stressed concrete beam bridge. And alternative C is a steel truss bridge. Alternative A is a steel design, mainly inspired by the existing bridge at Belleville Community Park. And alternative C is also steel design. However, so they're both pretty similar in that they'll have a lower initial cost and be easier to construct and maintain. And they're also pretty good in aesthetics. However, alternative C, since it has that intricate truss design, might cause obstructions to the views of the users on the bridge. Whereas with alternative A, you'd have a clearer view and be able to take in nature better. And then alternative B is the concrete design, which is durable and can hold a lot of weight, which makes it a little bit heavier. This design would likely require a pier at the middle of the main span, which would need to be placed in the stream. This would add to the cost and make constructability a little bit more difficult. So that was all taken into consideration. This is kind of a recap of the pros and cons that we looked at. This is what we used to score everything on our decision matrix. So this is the decision matrix that we prepared. The most important categories on here were initial cost, durability and lifespan, and aesthetics. So we scored everything accordingly and decided to proceed with design for the steel arched beam bridge.
So during our initial meeting with Gabe, we had talked about a lookout on near the bridge. But during our midterm meeting, it was decided that the lookout would kind of be a separate project that could maybe be like an add-on after this project. But we did decide that we would kind of come up with 2 maybe all locations and designs. So we came up with alternative A is a wood lookout, alternative B is a concrete lookout, and these would be on the right side of the bridge, looking either towards the lake or, having the bridge in the background. So for our decision matrix, we kind of, we looked at price, planet, people, and of those main things, there were initial cost, durability, and then obviously location and functionality were kind of the biggest ones. So for the wood one was able to be wood because it wasn't in like the floodway or floodplain. So it didn't have to worry about having to deal with all the water. The concrete is more in the floodway and floodplain. So it needs to be a little stronger, a little more durable, just in case there was to be a flood, it wouldn't be taken out. And from the decision matrix, we obviously got that option A, the wood lookout on the west side, would be the best location for the boardwalk.
So just a recap of the alternatives that we chose to do our final designs on. On the west side of the bridge is the straight trail, alternative B, and on the east side is also alternative B, which is also the straight trail. And then for the bridge, we determined alternative A, which was the arch steel B bridge to do our designs on.
So next we'll be going over the proposed final design. So for the primary trail, on both sides of the Sugar River, it's 10 feet wide with a 2% cross slope. On either side is a 6 feet wide grass shoulder with a 6% cross slope. This width was determined by the typical width of a riding lawnmower, as that is what we were told would be used to maintain this area. The surface for both sides would be a limestone chip base. This came from inspiration of the Mountain View Trail in Platteville, but then also the existing trail in Belleville. And then, like I said before, there is a boardwalk portion on the east side of the river. So for the west side of the Sugar River, you can see it here. It starts at the Future Park and then continues to the Sugar River at about a -3% slope. Like I said, there's the grass shoulders. This was a very direct route, and it would meet with the bridge at about 873 in elevation.
What is that distance there for that portion of the trail? Do you know? Just curious.
Off of the top of my head, I do not remember exactly. I could find that information for you after this.
Sure, no problem.
So this is the typical cross-section of this area. We were given the existing topography, and a lot of this slopes to the north down to a valley that then drains to the river. And so it was decided that this type of cross slope, which is different than the typical crown, all of this would slope to that valley to work with the natural topography rather than trying to work against it and having to then regrade parts of it to incorporate a stormwater ditch that would help move that stormwater. So then on the east side of the Sugar River, at the connection to the bridge, it is that limestone chip base, but then about halfway through, it transitions to the boardwalk due to that open water classification. From the bridge to the boardwalk, it's about a -1.5% slope, and then it continues downward and then gradually meets the existing trail. Where it meets the existing trail, it would also then become that limestone base. So for this part, it is that typical crown cross slope with the 2% and the 6% grass shoulders. This was done because using the given topography, this side of the river was a lot flatter, and so there wasn't a lot of those issues that we faced on the west side.
So next, we'll obviously talk about the bare earth offshoot trails. These are going to be 6 feet wide, and obviously they're going to be matching the surface. As the picture shows, this is a picture of the Eagle Trail, I believe. And in total, all 4 offshoots are going to be 9,500 feet in length. And we used the U.S. Department of Agriculture to determine running slopes, which is the slope basically in front instead of the cross slope. And this is to make sure that they meet, obviously, walking conditions and that they're not too steep or too shallow. This would be a location of one of them. It would be to the east of the new subdivision going in. It kind of goes around because looking at the village plans, there is plans to develop in this area. So kind of incorporating that and going around those new developments. It would start about halfway through the main trail and go out until, I think it's James Avenue. There's that little, what's it called? Yeah, there was like that basketball hoop area that we went by, kind of a little cut off from the subdivision. And then these are the next 3 locations. One giant one is, which I believe is like 5,600 feet long, goes over the north and west side of the new subdivision. This is gonna start about 70 to 100 feet into the main trail and will go all the way down until it meets on, it's James Avenue, I believe is where it meets on. And then we have 2 smaller trails that kind of cut in between the new subdivisions, meaning on Colt Drive and James Avenue, and then from James Avenue to Torrey Drive. And these are kind of about 700 feet in total length.
So for the bridge, our design process, we kind of started out, we had to determine the layout of what the bridge was actually going to look like. And then after that, we found the loads on the bridge and the load combinations of what we needed for our capacity. And then we modeled that all in Risa 3D, which got us, we just decided the members that we needed from that. And then the design, we started out with the superstructure of the bridge, which the superstructure is the components that sit on top of the foundation. And then the second part was the substructure of the bridge, which is the foundation elements themselves. And then we created a drawing set in AutoCAD for it. So this is our final layout that we came up with for the bridge. On the left side, you see that larger span, that's the 140-foot span. That's what actually crosses the main portion of the river. But because of the elevation difference on the sides of the river and needing to keep it ADA compliant, the elevation change is quite different on each side of the river. So it has to have such long ramp spans, which connects to the existing grade on the right side of the screen there. So for the design loads of the bridge, we had the dead loads on the beams themselves, which was the weight of the railings on the side as well as the weight of the decking itself. And then for the live loads, we followed the Wisconsin DOT's bridge manual. And in there for the pedestrian bridges, it gave us a value of 90 pounds per square foot, which was needed for pedestrians. But then also, since the bridge was larger than 10 feet wide, it needed to be designed for a maintenance vehicle to be able to drive over it. And the maintenance vehicle that they give you to design for is an H10 truck. This truck is 20,000 pound maintenance vehicle that's had to be designed for. Yeah. So the superstructure itself, the beams we came up with were for the main span of the bridge were W44 by 230 beams, which are very large, 44 inches tall, 230 pounds per linear foot, which is the main span. Very large beams, but because it's such a large span. And then for the ramp spans themselves were 18 by 35, so much smaller beams. And then there's lateral bracing that's needed every 10 feet along the bridge, which is 2 by 2 by 3 angles. And then the wood decking, we were initially going to design it to be 2 by 10 deck boards like the existing pedestrian bridge here. But because of that H10, the large truckload, it didn't pass, or it didn't have enough capacity. So we had to up it to 4 by 6 deck boards instead, which is thicker.
Next, for the substructure and foundation design, the first thing we had to consider was soil information that would be necessary for any design decisions. And next, the requirements that we needed to meet with this design was that it carried the superstructure loads, which is what Dane just explained, and also that it held an average channel velocity of 6.6 feet per second, because that'll cause a load on all the piers. And next, the substructure and foundation elements include the piles, pile caps, piers, and the connections to the superstructure. So first, since this area has yet to be developed, there was no soil information available to go off of for design. So we used 2 soil borings from the existing geotechnical report done for the bridge at Bellevue Community Park. And from this, we made a summarized soil profile of what soil conditions could be expected at this location. We decided that it would be a mostly sandy soil with the groundwater table at 3 feet below the surface, and that auger refusal would occur at 21 feet. This means that past 21 feet, you can't drill any further or place any piles below that. For the pile design, we use the software-driven piles to find pile capacities. Like I just explained, they would only go to a depth of 20 feet just to be safe with the 21-foot auger refusal estimate. And we decided to go with pipe piles with a closed end. The main span supports will be using a 14-inch diameter pipe pile with closed ends in groups of 4. This gives a capacity of 416 kips, where it actually only needs 346 kips. And then just for, if anyone doesn't know, 1 kip is 1,000 pounds. So that's how much it would be holding at each support. And then for the ramp spans, they only needed 10-inch diameter pipe piles going to the same length. Next, for the actual piles themselves, they need to be spaced at a certain distance from each other. So to do this, you check two conditions using the diameter and the length, and you choose the largest just to be safe. This helps minimize the negative effects of overlapping stress zones from the piles when they're driven into the ground. So we came up with a 4-pile layout for the main span, and these are spaced at 3 feet and 6 inches from each other. And then a 3-pile layout for the ramp spans spaced at 2 feet with 6 inches. On top of the piles, you put a pile cap, and there's 3 requirements that must be met. The first 2 are just industry standard, which indicate that the bottom of the pile cap needs to be 3 feet below the surface, and also that the pile cap must have a thickness of at least 18 inches. This is just so that it holds all the loads from the superstructure. And then also, according to WSDOT, the piles must be embedded at least 3 inches into the cap that goes on top of them. So these 2 pictures are the layouts that we came up with for that. The center of the pile must be 9 inches from the edge of the pile cap, so everything is spaced according to that. And lastly, the pier design. So the order of things will be the piles get driven into the ground, the pile cap is placed on top of it, and then these piers will go on top. So for the main span, we decided to use 3-foot by 14-foot rectangular block piers. These are all going to vary in height depending on what elevation it's going to meet at the main bridge component on top, which is the superstructure. And then for the ramp span, there'll be 2 feet by 14 feet rectangular block piers because they don't need to hold as much weight as the main span, and they'll also vary in height.
So next, we're going to talk about the construction schedule that we kind of came up with and our cost estimate. So we decided to go with a construction phasing, and basically this means that instead of the construction going basically one right after another, it kind of splits it up into like three different projects pretty much. And this can help obviously lower the cost so it's not all up front, and also can help maybe smaller contractors or maybe more local contractors have a chance to be a part of the project. So for our first phase, we decided we would go with constructing the bare earth trails. And we thought that this would take about from May to November of the first year. The second phase would be clearing and grubbing of the primary trails, followed by the bridge construction. And this basically is you need to clear and grub the area where the primary trails would go to be able to get your cranes and other operating crew in there for the bridge. And this would take from May to October of year 2. And our final phase, the third phase, would be the construction of the primary trail. And this would be from June to August of the third year. And for our cost estimate, we split it up into the trails and the bridges. So for the total cost of the trail came out just shy of 1.2 million, with 28% of that being material, 33% being labor, and then 15% being equipment and mobilization. And of those 3 materials, labor, and equipment, we took a 20% contingency, which was 19% of the total cost. And we also took a 5% engineering fee, which was 5% of the total cost. And then for the bridge, the total cost was just shy of 1 million. So it was 993,000, with 49% being the materials, 15% being equipment and mobilization, and 16% being labor. And similar to the trail, we took a 20% contingency, which was 16% of the total cost, and then a 4% engineering fee, which was 4% of the total cost.
So now for the conclusions and recommendations. So just go over what we designed for our alternatives is alternative B on the west side and for the west side of the bridge, then also alternative B for the east side of the bridge, and then the bare earth trails throughout. And then for the bridge, we designed alternative A, which was a steel arch beam bridge. And then the objectives that we completed over our course of the semester was we developed a design for the pedestrian bridge as well as the main trail and then the offshoot trails. And then we did construction phasing plan for the project.
So recommendations for future design, we recommend that a more in-depth hydrologic analysis is conducted. This is just because the resources available to us as students were very limited. With my HEC-RAS model, I was only able to access data that was a few years old, and so the riverbed could have changed in that time, and that would then impact the flood velocities, which would then impact the bridge design. So it'd be important to make sure that this information is accurate. We also recommend that soil borings are done in this area, just because this also influences the foundation design, depending on if there is agrofusel higher or lower than what is at the current pedestrian bridge. And then for future construction, we recommend that the costs are looked at, just because costs can change from now to whenever the projects are actually done. And because the resources available to us are limited, we don't have access to direct market values. And for the lookout alternative, we recommend the wood lookout on the west side. This would just match the boardwalk and the bridge materials and provide a more natural look to the area. And then we also recommend that trail amenities can be added to both the primary and the bare earth trails if the village wish. Are there any questions?
What do you guys think of your cost estimation?
Well, it depends on what type we were looking at. For the bridge, we were
Well,
Yeah.
for the materials and stuff like that, we, well, the wood and stuff, I sourced from a local, lumber. I don't know, distributor. And then we did for like the materials on the metal. We looked at like average cost per pound of steel for the project. So that's what we did for that.
And then for the labor for both, for the trails, I ran like a four crew labor. And then for the bridge, running a 5 crew, and just kind of figuring out like the basic the day cost, and then multiplying that by how long they would be working just for that. And then we use the WisDOT's manual to determine like clearing and grubbing and all of that. But it was obviously based on 2024 data. So it is obviously a little, that's obviously the newest that they have.
Stuff about bridge construction.
Nearing 301
I've got a question.
Yeah.
The West Tiger River is 6%, 2%, and 6% cross slope. Is there any concern for washouts?
There would be some concern, however, with routine maintenance, we think that would be okay, that it wouldn't be as large of a concern. However, if there was a large storm event, it would be recommended to go out and inspect the trail just to make sure that there aren't large pockets of washout. But if during construction it was compacted, it should be okay. But there are always those larger storms that you can't always design for.
You might also be able to like put maybe some like larger rocks or barriers kind of on that slope to maybe help with not having to wash it out as much or as often.
How much of a, did you run the numbers on the curved trails? The other options, instead of having a direct straight line, you know, I'd rather walk on something that kind of meanders around than direct and straight, so.
We did do a preliminary cost estimate just to kind of compare them. However, both of the curved options were more expensive than the straight options.
We didn't do any final cost estimates for
Yeah.
those, so we just did our, design.
Yeah.
So that was basically why you didn't, that wasn't your recommendation, was strictly on cost basically for.
Well,
Straight was just cheaper versus, or was there anything else deterring you from the alternate path?
I guess it was like a little less impactful on the environment. And then obviously on the west side of the bridge, since the curve trail kind of came in at a curve to the bridge, it'd kind of be a little hard, like if there was like a maintenance vehicle, depending on the size, to turn onto the bridge or to get there might be a little hard based on the curve that it was coming in at.
And then on the east side as well, with that curved trail that's more along the river, all of that trail would be in the floodway and the flood zone. And so obviously what we had was only the 100-year. However, since that area is still relatively flat, even if there was maybe a 25 storm, there is a lot more likelihood that that would get flooded and washed out more frequently than the more straight trail.
And I'm not that familiar with, the topology there, so.
Are there any other
Yeah.
questions?
Yes.
To the curb trail. From a slope standpoint, well, a couple questions. One from the slope standpoint, on the west side, the curb trail, would that impact the ability to keep it ADA compliant? Just because I think the slopes we walked at in the ridge, obviously, the slopes seem to be more extreme when we weren't going direct.
There would be, just because as I mentioned before, with that all sloping and that there's that valley that would cross the valley more.
Right.
And so it would be more expensive just because there'd be more fill required for that area. But then also like making sure the slopes, they're doing all of that would have a lot more cut in fill volumes, which would then increase the price as well.
And the second question is, the trail cost, is a significant portion of that the wood walkway on the east side to connect to the trail? Or is that all associated with the dirt trail on the west side? That's probably labor driven.
Yeah, I think most of the trail cost is a decent amount was more the labor. I think can't remember exactly how much the total was for the boardwalk. I think it was maybe like 16,000, 20,000, somewhere in there only.
But
Yeah.
that would, I guess, maybe I should clarify my question a little bit better. Is the boardwalk, is that considered part of the trail in your calculations or part of the bridge?
Part of the trail.
Is part of the trail. So, and the reason I asked that is because if the board, and I don't know what their decision is going to be, but if the board was to say, hey, we want to put in the west side trail, but we can't afford to do the bridge, that kind of negates the eastern trail to get to the bridge. That doesn't exist, right? So that would reduce the cost quite significantly potentially, but it sounds like the labor is really the driving force. In the cost.
Yeah, with having all the clearing and grubbing, basically to make it all ADA obviously accessible, but then also to get everything through is the biggest factor.
Good work.
Anybody else? Comments?
Great job.
We just wanted to say thank you both to the village and then our advisors and other faculty, but then also MSA Engineering for just all the help on this project, but then also providing us with this project for our senior design. It was a lot of fun to work on.
Do you get graded on this?
Yeah.
This is, for us, this is a class at university. It's our capstone.
Our senior design class.
Yeah. So it's
Which received the rubric.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
have to,
yeah, we
we have
did.
to return that. I thought your presentation was excellent and I felt it was really polished and you guys, certainly make me think you know what you're talking about.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
it's excellent. Very much. Wait a minute.
Not feel obligated to stay.
Because this is gonna get really boring really quick.
Yep. So, all right, that was great. That was better. The rubber's getting closer to the road and on some trails. So Kind of
I
excited
gotta
about
move though, we only have 3 years.
that.
Well, the TID funding, right? We gotta
Right.
get started.
Might have to accelerate that a little bit.
It's gonna be steep.
Well, I'm gonna speed up the meeting by going on to the next item.
Yes.
Good segue. Old business, discuss, consider State Highway 6992 and Tyler Street project.
So this is also another TID project. Just a reminder that the trail and bridge and this other, the 6992 and Tyler Street, and then Bell West, I think, what's the other one? Regardless, in this project, they're TID projects. They are not taxpayer funded projects. They're paid out of the TID on the west side. The village board went through a very lengthy process to determine what projects were going to be eligible projects. They do not impact the taxpayer, but it does show up as tax levy, even though it's not actually tax levy, which is that complication. But Kevin worked out and got some bid documents. And so Kevin, I don't know if you want to talk about those at all or.
So we ended up with 3 bids on the project. I assume you guys have a copy of them. So there's 3 projects. Just so everybody knows, there's Project A, which is the intersection. So that's Tyler Street and 69. Project B would be the extension of Bell West Boulevard from where it basically gets left off at Edison Street there beyond the chiropractor's place. It would extend it to the new subdivision, which Petrie's building right now, everything. So there'll be a roadway through there that'll connect to this intersection. And then the last project, the smaller one, Project C, is Dane County had requested the village last year to pave. There's about 6, I believe, water valves on State Highway 69 heading north out of town that are kind of just in the edge of or just off the shoulder of the road. So they didn't want to hit them with the plows. So they'd asked the village if they basically just not changing the roadway at all, but just basically put an asphalt flume model around them to basically encapsulate them in asphalt. So we tried to do that last year, but it was late in the year and we got a very high quote. So we ended up just including it in this project since we have a contractor in town that got a much better price on it. So those are the 3 bids. The low bidder was Parisi. And obviously they're very well known around the area and everything too. So
I would like to, one change addendum to one month of statements. Projects A and B are TID projects, C is not. And then the Public Works Committee has recommended that come out of our right-of-way maintenance.
Where?
The right-of-way maintenance fund, capital.
So project C is 27,000.
8,400. 8,400.
27,000 was the high bid.
Oh, okay, I'm
Yeah,
looking at
yep,
the
sorry.
separate bids here.
Just to move this along, I'll make a motion that we award the contract to Parisi not to exceed we go again with numbers. Yeah, what is that? 100 and you gotta make these bigger.
Total is 855,
Yeah.
032, 96.
Yeah, not to,
I'm having a hard time.
not to exceed that amount. Project A and B to be paid for by the TIF and project C to be paid out of the right-of-way maintenance line item in the capital budget.
Second.
Motion by Gary, second by Sherry. Shelley, sorry.
Sherry, Shelley.
Any discussion?
I told you, chief.
One of these days, I'm gonna get this smacked.
Mosquitoes.
All right, no discussion? Or is there anyone? Right, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes.
Evan, do you have any idea how many trees I've already killed today with these packets?
Yeah, so sit
I don't think we planned it enough to.
Sure, you're gonna have to find a few more.
I see, so.
Next item, discuss, consider resolution 2025-06, amending the adopted 2025 Village of Belleville Capital Projects Fund Budget.
So we're actually gonna reverse that. Let's talk about the next item.
Okay with that, if everyone else is, so, gonna go on to item C and come back to B then. Discuss, consider Fourth Street, Evert Street and Mitchell Street project.
Yeah, so this was a project that we didn't really know about. We knew we were needed to do the roads, but we did not know about LRIP funding prior to a few months ago. And then the police public works committee has been trying to work through that process. You guys were approached, I think, at one point about this. And so you guys directed us to get bids. We did. They're a little bit higher than we thought. So can we just go again?
Yep, this one we got 4 bids from, like Gabe said, the bids did come in higher than anticipated. A majority of the excess is basically water main costs. I did reach out to some contractors, basically, or one contractor, and asked him. And basically, he said as of from last year to this year, when we gave the estimate, he said water main, the cost of the materials and stuff has all went up quite a bit. So that's where a majority of the cost came in as far as the extra. This set stretch of road, it's kind of one of the last in the area there that still has the old 6-inch main. So, obviously we're upsizing it to the requirements of 8-inch main now and everything too through there. So, but
Kevin, are you familiar with G Pro?
we've done one other project here in the village. I can't remember when it was. It's been a few years ago, but yes, we have worked.
Okay. Where is he from?
Oh, I didn't, it's not too far. It's around this area, or southern Wisconsin here anyway. I can't remember. And then the objective of this project too is we were planning, the end date of this was to be done by the end of August. With the water main and roadway, that would give Ian and I the month of September to get final payments made. And then we got an extension from the DOT for the LRIP funding. Even though it was a minimal amount, but to get the dollars in, and then they gave us that extension to end of September, basically to get the funding back or documents in anyway. So
a little more history on this. This is, a couple months ago, there was a recommendation from Public Works to the board that with the estimates of $275,000 that we got, that $60,000 of that would be paid out of the capital item right-of-way maintenance, and the rest would be borrowed. Ian, I think everybody got the memo, but Ian thinks that we can pay for this out of undesignated funds from general fund, or utilities and stormwater utilities. So I have a motion I'll make, but I don't know if you want me to make it now or if you want to leave it. Have a little more discussion.
A little more discussion. I got a couple questions. So refresh for me, what are LRIP funds again and how is that related?
Local road improvement program. It's a matching program. We got 14,000 awarded for this project, actually just a mill and overlay, I think it was, for this portion of the project. But then we had no idea about it. It was something that Tim Francois and Roger Hillenbrand had signed off on the grant, and everybody who may have knew about it's gone. So I think you brought it up. Wondering.
we got an email from DOT.
Oh yeah, we got an email from DOT being like,
Sunset.
so. But I mean, long story short, we're like, okay, we could take a look at doing the mill and overlay, no big deal. And then I asked when about the utilities underneath and if those need to be replaced or when they were put in. He said 1950s. I'm like, hold on a second. And that's where that is. And then, so this all precipitated because of a $14,000 grant. But the thing about the $14,000 grant is that if you get awarded a grant through pretty much any state agency, with DOT specifically, and you don't use the funds, then you kind of get blackballed for any future funding over, I don't even know what the period is officially. There's an official period, and then there's until the person who remembers the period. But that wouldn't really help us out very much coming up with the 2030 project when we plan on going for a lot of DOT funds to be able to do our parking lanes and everything in tandem with the the redevelopment of the highway. So this is more of a not pissing off the DOT project than it is anything else. So it's time anyway. I mean, we have to do these things anyway, but the timing is so that we don't anger them.
So I assume you're looking at $306,000 number.
Yep.
So what is the breakdown of that, of how much is gonna come out of the general fund, sewer and?
On the resolution.
Yeah, it's on the,
I guess I didn't see the resolution, sorry.
yeah, no, I can pull it up too. On the budget amendment resolution. And I will note too that the $306,000 number, that's the low bidder. But then there's $36,000 in engineering fees that we would have as well that are included on the amendment, the budget amendment.
6,400 is coming from stormwater, 107 or $242,000 out of capital budget or out of undesignated funds. So yeah, and then 93,000 out of streets, which is undesignated. The middle, the 242,000 is out of one. I'm gonna make a motion that we award this contract to G Pro in the amount not to exceed $307,000.
Additional discussion?
How much will we have to borrow for this?
Nothing, it's coming out of
Nothing?
gas. That's what the discussion was with Public Works.
Okay, that's what I thought. And I'll second that.
Jeff?
I guess I'm not understanding the funding. It's $93,000 coming out of the general fund, basically. Was this ever budgeted for?
No.
Not at all.
Not at all.
So we couldn't borrow for if it wanted to, basically.
We
because
could.
it's
Yeah,
part
we
of the
could.
Capital budget.
We'd have to amend the budget, which we'll have to,
Anyway.
yeah.
I guess like,
and there's another resolution on for tonight to declaring, reimbursement or whatever, so that we can borrow for it later in tax-free issuance.
well, and I guess that's sort of my question is, why would you not borrow in a fashion that you could prepay it early without penalty, rather than getting out over your skis and spending the cash that you got in hand?
I mean, I laid it out in the memo I provided the board. I mean, we have ample room to be able to undertake the project in cash without really negatively affecting anything. Still keeping all minimum fund balances, at least what's projected for 25. The general fund's the only one that's under minimum by policy, and that's only by $50,000. But we have at least another $400,000 in cash injections this year to date. So we're going to be well over that.
Optimistically, yes, I would agree, and I don't disagree with that, and I'm not trying to
Yeah.
like whatever, but it just seems, well, last 2 years, we've taken very difficult efforts to get to where we are now, and it concerns me a bit that a month after we get an audit report that says, hey, we're in great condition, we're saying, let's spend it. Like, that's not the appropriate fashion to do it. I think if we were to prepay debt, it would accomplish the same thing. It'd be a little bit more costly, but it would have, like, it just seems like the more frugal thing to do.
I just don't want to incur the issuance cost and the interest costs on it.
Yeah, no, I get it. I'm not saying like never ending, but
Yeah.
like until we get to that reserve amount, it seems like it's just an aggressive way of approaching.
If we're talking about prepaying debt that we already have outstanding, we can do that. But then the issue is that when we take out new debt, it's going to be at like 5 points higher than
I get it.
most of the debt that we have, with the exception of last year's issuance. Most of the debt that we have is below 4%, which we're not going to find.
No, I get it. I get nervous when we start saying like, oh, we've got all this money and like we get it, money burning a hole in our pocket, basically just spending it. That's.
I don't have money, but I'm pretty.
Well, that's, the behavior might suggest otherwise, that's all.
I think for this, though, this is a much needed.
And it's not about the project, it's about the spending of the cash.
It's how it's paid for. It's not I don't have any objection at all to the project. It needs to be done. Exactly. There's two parts of this. There's the project, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to just be talking, but there's the project itself and there's how you pay for it.
I'm thinking, I trust that. Because that would be more of a pain to adjust the budget now, midstream, wouldn't it?
It requires the budget amendment resolution. I mean, that's really all it would require to amend any part of the budget, 2/3 vote. That's it. So that's already been prepared, so it's not a big deal. And so, like I said, I also have the just in cases. I have a resolution that's coming up, 2025-07, the resolution declaring official intent to reimburse expenditures from the proceeds of borrowing. And that one would cover us if you guys decide towards the end of the year that we're doing our issuance, that you do want to reimburse ourselves for this, then we can do that, no problem. Not just this year, we can reimburse at any point really, but.
Okay, so. Right, so
So this motion is only to move or to award the contract. The next.
Yep.
The resolution, total, how we pay for it, I guess, is a whole separate issue here, so.
Not opposed to it. I'm just giving you guys something to think about.
We were trying to make this a short and sweet meeting, Johnny.
That's not the way it works.
So the contemplating the whole, Jeff's comments about short-term financing versus spending,
So let's,
and
Make another comment in mind.
no,
Ian basically just said that there is a mechanism to basically refund the cash as part of a borrow, which is sort of the reverse. It's like another alternative to do that, but that's basically a safety mechanism to put the cash back in place is what Ian's
It's something you
describing.
gotta do every year with the way I have it set up, where we take out the issuance for our capital toward the end of the year after we made the purchases and everything.
Choose to go with the cash and through our financial management plan. Brian's like, oh, hold on. Let's borrow that. We can always do that at that time.
It's kind of the reverse of what I described.
Yeah.
The whole thing with bringing up the cash at this point is that we have the ability to do it right now and we're fine. And then if you take a look at our CIP, I'm just trying to lighten the load on the CIP.
so we have a motion seconded to award the contract to G Pro Excavating.
I'm sorry, I missed the second again.
Tony, I think.
Sorry, thank you.
To exceed 307,000.
We roll it. I think I pulled out the exact number there for
Okay, 306,792.60.
306,792.60, yes.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Right. So projects approved. And then next item here is amending budget to pay for the project.
So we're back at B.
you gotta go back to B.
Sorry.
Yep, which is item B.
So this is the budget amendment resolution. And so regardless of how you pay for the project, this just sticks the project in the budget because it's not currently in the budget. So you can, add on payment method to this vote if you'd like.
So the other, not on your budget amendment would be the motion that the recommendation from Public Works Committee was to go with this funding and then the $60,000 that was previously approved by this board to take that out of the right-of-way maintenance line item would be put back in the right-of-way maintenance or right-of-way line item budget. So we would have $100,000 to put towards seal coating, sidewalks, all that kind of stuff, the full amount rather than the 40 that we were cutting ourselves down to by taking $60,000 out before Ian came up with the other way to finance this project. That really probably needs to be this, if this resolution passes, then there needs to probably be another motion to do that then afterwards, so. So I'll move that we adopt resolution 20-25-06.
Second.
Additional discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
So can I make that motion or should we put that on the agenda for the next meeting that that $60,000 not designate what that $60,000 was?
Yeah, we never had spent it, so your previous motion though didn't tell us a funding source to it.
No, it didn't say a funding source. The 60,000, there was never a budget amendment to take that out of the budget.
You're right. There was never a budget amendment done, but there was a motion
It was.
by the board to do that. So
So I guess whenever you guys make a motion on where the funding source comes from, then you just negate the previous board action. So new board action will replace former board action.
So based on the conversation that was had before, if we made a motion to pay for this project, at least right now to pay for that out of cash, and if we got down the road and we had to do a borrow, we could change it at that point, correct?
Yes. And we are going to do a borrow. So at the end of the year, from all capital items, we borrow.
Okay, so
So
we'll pay for it out of cash, out of these three funds that are on here for now. And if at year end, we're not as robust as Ian had in his memo, and again, I think he's pretty conservative in his memo there, but then we could at that point decide to borrow that
yes,
money, right?
and that's why Brian is involved with the financial management plan. So
Okay, so then I'll make a motion that we pay for the item in resolution 2025-06 from cash funds, from undesignated funds in those three funds.
I'll second that.
Now where I should amend it to say that if it's paid in cash, we take the $60,000 or we don't designate that, or that goes,
no, because you said undesignated funds.
okay.
If it would make you feel better, you can, but you don't need to.
By Gary, second by Deb to.
It's easy. That's easy.
Oh, my God. Look at it straight.
Hmm?
My head is just not working real well. To pay for resolution 2025-06 with cash from undesignated funds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. On to new business. Discuss and consider resolution 2025-07, declaring official intent to reimburse expenditures from proceeds of borrowing.
I said before, like, as we start buying or paying for anything that was in the capital budget, as of the start of this budget year, we pay in cash generally, and then towards the end of the year, project's completed and everything that we're going to get done is when I do the borrow. I don't like to take it out at the beginning of the year because then you cash sits down. So just reimburse ourselves. And to do so in a tax exempt offering, we have to have this resolution.
I do have one question about it.
Yep.
So when I was looking through the list, didn't we purchase a fire truck this year too?
It got pushed.
It got pushed.
Next year.
Pushed for years. It's been pushed again.
Not gonna be delivered till next year, probably.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, that stinks. Okay,
The ambulance this year,
Same
though.
with the.
yeah.
Yeah, I've got
It
the,
got pushed too.
You think, no,
The ambulance got pushed?
Yeah,
have EMS vehicles in there anyway, because I wasn't sure.
yeah, it's gonna be close on the.
this year. We still haven't figured out, as we're working through the contract, remember, when do we pay for it, when we decide we're paying for it? So not that it's been fully settled yet, so it's when it arrives. Why we're not sure yet.
And then the command vehicle was budgeted for.
Yes.
Yes.
Public Works truck, which one is that? Is that the?
You have enough 250 that's purchased and that we're,
250.
should be here soon.
Oh,
Oh, nice.
Oh,
Oh,
it's coming tomorrow.
okay. Some of the stuff was before my times. I make a motion that we see. Yes.
Adopt.
Adopt resolution 2025-07.
Very official intent to reimburse expenditure.
Second. Thanks.
All those in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Discuss, consider the change order for water tower project. Evan.
So we, just to go back for those that weren't around anyway, the water tower was inspected in 2022. And from that, the village basically put in a budget item of 90,000, I think, Gabe, was that correct? And it was to basically clean the exterior and put an overcoat on it. And then it was to spot repair the interior is what they recommended. And then some miscellaneous piping and different things. So we use that as the scope. So in 2022, when that was inspected, they don't drain it for that inspection for the DNR that's required. So we're basing it on that inspection from 2022. That's where our scope came from. Went out and got some bids. They have just started work on it and they drained the tank for the work that they're doing on the exterior and everything as well. And when they drained it, they basically said to spot repair the inside, I'm gonna use rough numbers, but they basically, part of that scope was like $15,000 for the spot repairs on the inside. When they drained it, it basically looked very bad inside. So their recommendation was to basically, it should be sandblasted and repainted, which will then last, usually they say 15 to 20 years, which the last time it was painted was about 20 years ago, 2006. And then there were some issues with the paint then as well. So obviously right now you've got it drained. So this would, obviously not have to have it drained again in a year or two or whatever. So he gave us a quote on Saturday, basically to do that. He would deduct off the roughly 15,000 that was the spot repair, add in to do the full sandblast and paint the interior. And then the only thing that is not included on there is he did say that there'd be an extra $5,000 off if the village would take basically the sand. There's about 2 truckloads of sand that'll come out of there from the sandblasting. They'll deliver it or basically put it at the dump site. And then they'll test it and provide the village with a letter that says it's good for fill material and stuff like that. But it'll save them taking it to a landfill, basically. So they would, if the village will take it. I talked with Tom and Drew this morning and they don't have a problem with that. So I would request for him to basically give us the $5,000 as well, is the way it sounds. So.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the change order for the water tower.
Second.
So, I assume, I don't know much about sandblasting. There's gonna be paint chips and stuff in it. If it doesn't pass inspection, then we have to pay to have it hauled away to a landfill or something.
He said he's never had a problem with any of that stuff, but they've always been able to use it, tested it and everything.
And the last time it was spot repaired was how long ago?
Well, it was painted in 2006. Then there were some repairs done after that.
I think a
because
couple of years after.
failed.
Okay,
It's starting to get about the time that I started. So
I mean, look-
wasn't sure either.
looking at the pictures, I mean, you can see, it looks like it's, the repairs, you can see the spots and those are failing also. So,
If you look at the report from 2002 or 22, like a couple of years ago, it's way different to the pictures that are just taken last week or whatever. So
okay, got a motion on the floor to accept the change request.
I'm gonna ask again, did Shelley or Maxine get that second?
Oh, I seconded it. She made it.
I made it.
Okay,
Made it.
And I seconded
okay.
And
I had, okay.
Shelley said second as well, that's.
Yeah, so I have
Maxine is
Deb with the motion.
Deb made the motion.
And I heard Shelley and Maxine at the same time, which is why I defer to you on who gets the second. So,
Shelley had the second.
okay.
Rough night.
What's that?
Third meeting.
That's okay. I'm not blaming you.
No,
Just-
third meeting tonight. No, I'm just saying, we'll get in a rhythm eventually. We're fine.
All right, any other discussion on?
so funding, we discussed and the recommendation from Public Works was to do this with the funding to come, and I gotta pull on my minutes or my notes.
Stormwater.
Yeah,
This one would be.
out of the water utility.
So do you want to amend the motion to that?
I'll amend it to this funding, the additional funding to come from the water utility.
Second.
So, for you guys to go crazy, is everybody unanimous on the amendment to the motion? Or do we need to vote both?
Just reread it.
Okay, the funding, okay, so the amendment was the funding to come from, I only got those words right. What was it?
Water utility.
Water utility. So if everybody's unanimous, nobody disagrees with that, I can just include that into the original motion without having to.
That's
fine. That's fine. Then we'll just add that into the original motion.
So the motion now reads to accept the change order for the water tower repair with funding to come from the water utility.
Should we put the dollar amount in there? This
Probably.
would be 174,950. Now,
does that include the 5,000?
well, 179 is without
Oh,
it,
that's what.
but 174,950 would be the 5,000 taken out, right?
No.
Good.
Yes,
So not to exceed 174,950. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next item, discuss, consider resolution 2025-08, adopted 2025 Village of Belleville Capital Projects Fund Budget.
You guys just voted on to the budget.
Make a motion, we approve resolution or adopt resolution 2025-08.
Second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Discuss and consider Leak adjustment policy.
Okay, everyone's favorite reoccurring. We voted on not the last Public Works Committee. One before that. This would be, customers are only eligible for one leak credit application per calendar year. A single occurrence being eligible for adjustment of 50% sewer of an amount above the monthly average. So it's the one selected from the three options provided. Committees.
So is there a big demand for this? I mean, a lot of.
Bigger than you'd think.
It gets used quite a bit.
It is.
We've had more recently, I think, the last 6 months, but it, ebbs and flows, but
The meeting we had last week was the first meeting in months, but we haven't had a sewer use adjustment or request on there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I make a motion to adopt. Lost it.
adjustment policy.
Thank you. Yes.
Second, so let's repeat that.
I didn't have that.
I'll second that.
Second by Gary. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yes, John.
Not understanding we're basically not refunding people at full percent. Like if there's an issue with a leakage. That's correct.
Yep.
But like, let me give you an example, because like this just happened a couple years ago with Smith's. Dan was here and they had a leakage for a full weekend. It came to the board multiple times. There was like no fault of the residents. And we're basically just saying, well, pound sand, you're gonna pay half the bill. That's the thing in Belleville is you have to pay for the.
Was that one where the hose was left down?
Yeah, like it was the storm. Like, it triggered, like it broke something to make it run.
So the three options that we looked at were more or less the current policy until this one got adopted. There was a second one where you had to prove that it didn't. So anything on the inside would not have got an adjustment. The second policy, and then this was the kind of the compromise between two, that we would give a 50% for, so if you had a bathroom or a sink leak or a toilet leak in the house, you can still get a reimbursement up to 50% with this policy. So that was, if I remember correctly, our discussion last week, that was kind of where at least the majority of the committee was at, so.
I think it would be hard too to determine how much was actually caused by the leak, right? Or is it, I don't know much about how you guys do the water and sewer, like billing stuff.
I mean, after the fact, determining how much of the water loss is due to leakage. I mean, it's not an exact science, but I mean, simply basing it off, comparing what they used for whatever period of abnormal water use this is over their average for the year, the monthly average for the year. I mean, that's giving you a decent ballpark. I mean, it's probably not exact, but it's pretty good. As for which policy you're choosing is really very much your decision. Operationally, side, I don't see a whole lot of difference. It's the choice do you want to make? Yeah.
None of them are popular.
Well, my only comment was just like, if you have a malfunctioning toilet and it's leaking and you're trying to get a plumber in, you can't get it fixed, and you come in to get a refund and you get 50% of it, then it still continues to leak. Like, yeah, it's the fault of the resident, but it's not like they can control it. Like, if they're trying to take appropriate actions, I think that the village should, this is just my opinion, that the village should do what they can to try to work with the resident.
I mean, the hard part for me in this is we're literally talking about a resource where, like, yes, there's costs to provide water, but this isn't like, it's not like we've got a supply of water sitting somewhere that we're saying, okay, this is $500 worth of water and we're only gonna reimburse you $250 worth of that water. I mean, I don't think we've got hundreds of people coming in for refunds for this type of thing.
To be clear, you don't get the refund on the water.
It's on the sewer.
It's on the sewer.
It's on the
Or the sewer.
Because
that's
the water is regulated by the,
No, I understand.
yeah, so.
And
It's essentially.
the point of, it's unfortunate for somebody whose toilet is leaking, and that sucks. But also, every other taxpayer is paying for that fund that has to go back into our sewer system. It costs us a lot of money to have to re-sanitize everything, re-put it through the system to push it back out. So we don't think about that. Yeah, it's lost, but also we are paying for that to be lost and then again and again. So it's double way.
But the water treatment is no different than the deduct meter, because this isn't water that's coming from something else.
Well, it's water that's coming back into the toilet system. So when it
Correct.
goes back into the sewer system, it has to go back through.
Right, but it would be the equivalent of like deduct meter. It's.
Deduct meter doesn't go through the toilet line, it goes on the ground. It doesn't go back into the system.
I would also point out, you talked about the continually leaking toilet that you're trying to get fixed, but and that's actually, if you know it's a problem, and that's actually already ineligible. Because you know it's a problem and you haven't fixed it.
Well, but if they're attempting to get it fixed, right, like if I came in, I would hope that the board would be receptive to that. If I came in and my toilet was whatever, and I said, hey, I've had a plumber out, like, it's the same issue and it's an ongoing, it's the same issue. I would hope that the village would say, we know that you're trying to fix it, like, whatever, but like, it sounds like not.
No, we help,
Sounds
like, we
ridiculous.
just can't do though. We just don't, it's not feasible. Some municipalities even do it, you have one adjustment per the time you own that house. That's it. Like, this is a pretty relaxed period.
Yeah,
At that point,
do we have a population of individuals that are abusing it?
yeah, but like that, it would be more cost effective for the village to replace the toilet than it would be for us to keep waiting.
And we're talking about a hypothetical in that scenario, and I totally get that. I guess I'm not understanding why this became such an issue. That's I guess what is, but. So it doesn't make sense to me.
And like I said, we had three alternatives. This was kind of the middle one. The first alternative was to leave the current policy we have now, which gives you up to 4 and a 5-year period, I think. And it's 100% for the first one, 75% of the requested amount for the second one, 50 for the third, and 25 for the fourth. And that includes that one allow, leaky toilet, leaky faucet, whatever. The middle one would have the only thing you could have gotten an adjustment for with the other policy we looked at was for an outside faucet left on. Everything inside would have been ineligible to be reimbursed for. So like I said, this was kind of the middle of the road compromise one, so. And also it did not pass Public Works unanimously, so.
Well, now that you mention it. I mean, honestly, no, I'm thinking like, because like, I have an upstairs toilet, nobody goes upstairs. If it's leaking, I don't know,
Through the portal and through all the residents' tools that they have, you can monitor your own water leak. There needs to be some ownership on the homeowner.
oh, absolutely, I agree with that.
That's really where this kind of started, was when the last couple, one or two of the last couple adjustment requests we've had was whose responsibility it is. There are some people in town that would, when we first went to this meter service, and we had half as many homes as we have now, or 2/3 as many homes we have now. We actually had staff time that could go in and look at these reports they generate and, ooh, that looks like they're high, so they call the people. We just don't have that much staff and that much staff time now to do that. So.
I would think as a homeowner, you're checking your stuff. I know upstairs we can shut off the water, adjust the toilet. or just
So-
the bathroom sink. So I think 50% is fair. Because I mean, the responsibility does lay on the homeowner.
You can go above if you want, whether it be 75%. That's, it's just, yeah. Or
So this credit, if I'm reading this the way I understand it, must be requested within 10 working days of receipt of the second high bill. So essentially you got 2 months that we would go back retroactively and adjust for.
Yep.
Because the assumption is it took you 2 months to notice that your toilet was leaking. So that's I'm playing it in your scenario, Jeff, that's a rolling 2 months then of, you had 2 months, oh, my toilet's leaking. I'm trying to get a plumber in. So, and I guess I would make the argument if it's a leak that's that extreme, every toilet has, a valve that you can shut it off, or you can, go down into your basement or wherever and potentially turn that off too. Hopefully it's not your only.
I mean, somebody could make a motion to amend this to, two big changes on here are only one adjustment per year and the 50%. So,
If I remember correctly, Gary, we're going to be looking to get a price on that ion water
there's
so that residents can monitor their own water.
it's like I said, there's been specifically one of our recently approved requests was that, they think that the village should do more to notify them. And the current village policy is it gets sent out by United States Postal Service. We don't call, one of the things we talked about is emailing these people, we don't call necessarily. So again, with our beloved Postal Service, by the time it leaves here, goes to Milwaukee, comes back, it's 3 or 4 or 5 business days. So that's additional 3 or 4 days. So there is a program that we talked about at the meeting last week. There's the ion water. Drew kind of reported on it tonight, but there is a cost the village would have to become part of that. And then our residents would be able to get into that account, look at their water usage as often as they want to do that. But again, that's not a budget. It's not in the budget for this year, and we don't have pricing. Drew's going to get some additional information on pricing. So I guess the other option is we could just table this until we know more about that or whatever too. So there's all kinds of options. This has been on Public Works Committee meeting for 2 or 3 months at least. So we.
It's like the point Jeff made. And I like telling the community, go pound sand. We don't care if your toilet's broke.
And I think that's a complete exaggeration, because that's not true. We are giving you a refund. We are making it eligible for you, but there are rules. And you also, as a homeowner, need to take responsibility. And every other person should not be responsible for your failure.
I agree. And if it takes 2 months to realize that your toilet's leaking, then.
And that's why it's 2 months, is you might have a high water bill, you might have filled your pool. And then the next month, that's why we give you the 2 months, so you can figure out what's going on.
See, because I got a note, it's my personal experience, saying that I had a high water usage. I realized, yes, because I washed all the.
You washed your house, you did,
Yeah.
you power washed your deck.
Yes, so, yeah.
That's where and I don't.
Why we encourage everybody to get a deduct meter, because then they can do that stuff off their deduct meter. So they don't get the sewer charge for that. So.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm breaking all the rules tonight. I apologize, but the 2 months is likely because you'd have if the issue happened over the toggle from 1 month to the next, you wouldn't be able to notice it. Like my water bill's like $86 a month. So if my water bill was $90, I'd be like, oh, this is weird. And I wouldn't know until the second month because
whatever. That's likely the reason why we did it 2 months. It's not that like my toilet's gonna be like having an issue for 2 months.
Right.
And that was just an example. There's 50 different things that could happen with water leakage and whatever. It's not an issue for me. I don't really care. I just think it's more the persona that you want to represent.
Be sure it's a leakage because we got that and it was a bad meter.
Yeah.
When
right.
I was standing there, you could watch the meter spin.
Right.
He said, there's nobody here during the day. There is no leak. And it took him, standing there watching. He goes, oh, you just used 8 gallons. And it's like, yeah, you're all standing here. Nobody's touching a thing. So ours was not leakage. Ours was a bad meter.
And that goes a whole different policy.
Yeah. All right, so where are we at? We've got a motion, right? To
Yes, we have a motion and a second to approve the leak investment policy. As is.
I think we leave it as is.
I don't know.
Way to go, Jeff. Thanks for coming.
All right. Any additional discussion?
I'm wondering if we should just table this until we look at this so that the community can look at their own water bill.
Yeah, but do we know when that's gonna be?
Well, we're waiting for Drew to get.
Yeah, I don't think we table it for that long.
Because it won't be effect
Until January of next year.
This,
but we didn't need software.
If it takes.
yeah, I know, that's too long to wait.
We gotta find out the cost of it. What is it
Exactly.
all gonna come up to a
It's
cost?
$3,000 to $5,000.
Yeah, that's, yes.
Well,
A year.
Find out.
that's a good idea.
I don't think this is dependent on whether or not we have the software and.
We already do. Residents can log into their portal and see their usage.
But the numbers they get in there don't change. This ion water,
Is minute by minute, I assume.
yes. So
Is what?
Minute by minute.
where the portal right now is. What?
It's month to
Twice a
month.
month or whatever, so yeah.
My question would be, do you need the minute by minute, how much water you're using?
I don't.
But anyway, that's a different subject.
Yeah.
But
Well, and just one last little thing, the leak notification that we've been talking about, that's the issue too, But somebody like Jeff, the thing he mentioned, if his bill went up $4, well, okay, a couple of showers or whatever, a couple extra loads of wash, but the other thing, if you try to look at just that report that comes out, is you need to interpret that report is, are there kids home for the summer now that we're gone to school and, all that kind of stuff. So there's too many variables in there for somebody in this office to sit and make those decisions. Yeah, I'm going to call them or I'm going to send them an email or whatever. Whereas if we go to this ion water, the onus is back on the owner to determine why is my water so much higher and, things are the same. So whatever. So.
Plus they can set up notifications to send
Right.
notifications.
I'm not saying the water isn't a good idea. I just think this we can adopt now. And then talk about that later. Instead of basing it on that software.
Plus, we do technically have policy in place now that this was just be replacing. So it's like, which was apparently not, like, one, people were looking for a change in. So to hold it would just mean we would revert back to the old policy until this was passed. So like.
This is fine. So we've got a motion on the floor. To vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I oppose.
Guess we'll have to do. Roll
It's
call.
not a roll, I think we've got 2 opposed with a voice vote.
It was opposed. All right.
Unless I missed Debbie, were you? 'Cause I had Maxine and Tony opposing. That seem correct? Were you?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, so she's a vote, yeah, so it's a 5-2 pass there. Oh, we're good.
Yeah, I thought I heard 3 opposed, but my ears are getting older. Okay. That was item D. Discuss, consider the village mechanic position.
Yes, we are looking at This isn't additional personnel. We're looking at transition to one of our current mechanic position, which would be a person who has primary responsibility for vehicle maintenance. Starting in public works. To be, you know, things like oil changes and filters and monitoring and tracking maintenance schedules and repairs. Also be in charge of supply acquisitions so we could plan out what we're going to need for vehicle maintenance over the year instead of buying piecemeal, kind of what we're doing now, which I think is putting unnecessary financial strain. I think we could probably do better if we had more planning, and this would put some of that responsibility on that person. In this job description, it still will function like pretty much everyone else where we share the work. Utilities guys do street work, street guys do utilities work. So it's still in here that he's, you know, plowing, cutting grass, everything else, but this gives him a primary onus of responsibility for vehicle maintenance. And there was one brief amendment made on there during committee. Correct me if I don't quite have this right. Position will be reviewed for consideration to expand duties to all village vehicles after 9 months. Yep.
So question,
Yes.
is the salary range the same as what they would be getting now,
Yes.
working for the village?
No salary adjustment.
I'm sorry, what?
No salary adjustment.
How many hours a month would you say is going to be spent on this?
It's hard, a good question.
It's probably a shift of hours because right now you're taking the vehicle or whatever in for maintenance somewhere, right?
Yep.
So we're transporting that, loading it and transporting it and that, correct?
There's some of that. I don't think there's, at least if we extend responsibility after 9 months to the entire village, that will change things. I don't actually see a whole lot of difference in hours worked because the work that he is able to do right now, he is doing on the vehicles. But this is about actually putting on paper that this is his responsibility. It gives him essentially more skin in the game, and it also, as a village, tells us who's going to be providing this work. So it's not completely piecemeal. It's a regular scheduled part of the program for him.
And I think the other main part of this is, yeah, they're doing the work already, but it's gonna, to set the record, maintain the records. I mean, that's a big part. I'm guessing, you know, I haven't looked, but you know, it's the maintenance records on everything, you know, I'm guessing they're kind of piecemeal right now, but you know, this person, the part of the responsibilities of this person would be to maintain those records in an orderly fashion so that when we go to buy a new F-250 or whatever, we can say, well, why do we have to buy it now? And the other one's only 4 years old. We can say, we've done all this to that old truck and it's all organized, that where we have to go back and look at invoices and things like that. So
That's doubly important now because we're also still largely making that analog hard copy to digital transition. It has to happen.
and for, not that this would come out of grants, but for, you know, even like roads, for if you want to get FEMA reimbursement, if we have a major flood come through and we're taking out roads and culverts and stuff down, you need to have these maintenance records on roads. So I see this as a stepping stone from our equipment to that kind of stuff, to culverts and bridges and this roads and all that kind of stuff.
This also relates, in my mind, to, I mean, I presented the 5-year capital budget for public works, but and granted, of course, everything changes over time, but we've actually planned that out over a much longer stretch. And so we're trying to keep our vehicle lifespans long because we don't want to be spending $70,000 on a new truck every 6 years if I can do it every 9. You know, obviously, and having responsible maintenance for that will help us increase those lifespans. Now, yes, Never mind, I won't go farther into that. I think that stays on subject. So otherwise I'll delve into capital. That's another one.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the village for the mechanic position.
Second.
You have a question? Yeah. So Gary, and I'll give the second to Debbie. So this is as written, or are you including this change you're talking about for in
Yeah.
9 months expanding to all vehicles?
Yeah, well, I'll amend my motion to that the
Well,
position.
hold on a second.
Okay.
Before, so what does that mean exactly? Or expand on what does that mean, expanding the duties to all village vehicles?
So that would start with adding the police department vehicles in.
Doing oil changes and stuff like that.
Oil changes.
Oil and filter.
But, you know, we don't, it's, as far as I remember, we don't have a lift or anything or, you know, a garage to be doing, you know, putting the car up on a lift or whatever. You're gonna be, you know, putting it on ramps and crawling under it type of thing. So I don't know if that's the right thing to be doing. I mean, we're gonna have a whole auto garage that we're gonna have to expand into then.
Well, and we may decide that after 9 months, we just want to review how many hours, because I think that's something we should keep track of on their timesheet, is how many hours they're actually doing this position. So we know that, and then, maybe at that point, we decide, yeah, no, he's got enough, this position's got enough to do this in Public Works, but at least at 9 months, we would look and see, are there other options, and is it feasible to do the other options? It's not saying that we are gonna expand.
You know, what implications does it have on our newer vehicles that are under warranty? You know, should we be getting, you know, oil changes done with the dealer, you know, or not? So. I mean, that's another consideration, so.
Yeah, but when I take my car, I can take my car anywhere. It doesn't affect the warranty.
Yeah.
I can go to Jiffy Lube or I could go to.
Usually, as long as you have receipts for things and all that,
As long as it's not warranty work.
I also do want to reiterate that the intent really wasn't so much the change in labor for what he was doing, but the onus of responsibility.
You're tracking it better.
Yeah.
And he's already doing the work. It's giving him credit for doing the work and giving him ownership of the work that he's doing. His work is already being done. So I wouldn't worry about the lift right now because we're already doing all of that. Right now, it's giving him the responsibility and then also putting ownership on somebody. Say, hey, we have a new truck now. Let's take care of the thing we bought. Are we cleaning that?
It's not an afterthought. It's not a one-off. This is my routine.
And then eventually, as we are going through our architectural review right now, we have a mechanic lifts in our the budget right now in the discussion of the want list for Public Works. That allow us to do more things. What if we buy our own oil tank or gas tank, diesel tanks? The school district has already talked about, maybe they wouldn't share. Fire and EMS could share out of that. Like, and then they just have a punch card and work. Who's ordering that kind of stuff? Who's taking care of that kind of stuff? So it's, yeah. We need to have better ownership of our vehicles.
I do think that Mike brought up a very good point, because with your new vehicles, a lot of times your oil changes, et cetera, are put right in with your car or your truck.
Where?
And
Where?
Brand new car last year, I don't get any free oil changes or anything.
Thing of the past.
I've seen that.
But it's in the past.
Truck, you didn't have to pay for oil changes or anything for 3 years.
But that's a thing in the past.
No, he's got a new truck.
It's probably not included with whatever our contract is, and I guess that'd be part of tracking it, knowing, you know.
And
Where
is
to
that
go?
also part of this too or is the garage maintaining thing? Are we keeping a clean workspace? We were looking at just the vehicles, right? We also need to maintain a clear shop for those vehicles. It's great if the vehicle's clean, but if the shop is filthy, it doesn't really matter what the vehicle looks like. It also is representative of the government. And if we're driving with a very messy vehicle, then that looks bad. You know, if somebody pulls up to a house, look at a leak, or have to go inside of the house for a meter, and then their truck is filthy, or you open it and the soda cans fall out or whatever, like, this is that person's job to make sure that what we have is clean and representative.
This isn't a new position. We're not
It's a new-
hiring somebody new. We're just giving
Just,
somebody basically a new title.
So I mean,
I'm just a little hesitant on expanding basically into the police department.
So,
But we're just reviewing that.
yeah, that's just to be reviewed. We're not saying we're gonna do that, but that was part of the conversation that came up at Public Works was, could it expand to, you know, other departments in the future? It certainly could, but that's something, right now, this is only a Public Works. It only is gonna take care of Public Works vehicles. So in 9 months, we may say, yeah, we're just gonna leave it the way it is, but we just want to review the.
See this one around bird with a beak going quack and wanting to call it a duck. That's all this is.
Because like I said, I would like, one of the things when, if we approve this tonight, I'd like to see that as a line item or a line on their timesheet as to how many hours a week or, you know, that they are actually doing these mechanic duties, keep track of those. So, you know.
And the only reason that the police department got brought into it was because originally when this was presented to us, it had in their village fleet vehicles.
Yeah.
Oh.
I do think that we have to be careful though, that with new vehicles or whatever, that having somebody grease them, change the oil or whatever, we don't want that to take away from our warranty.
Yeah, that's not.
That's what this position's for, though, to manage and track that, so.
Yeah, well, that's what I would say, but nevertheless, I would be careful of that.
So we've got a motion by Gary, second by Debbie for,
Approving
the village mechanic position. Need anything about review?
What's the start date on that?
yeah, we already have an employee that's doing it.
Just official.
Yeah.
So, yeah, basically, title change, official.
And did we take the village fleet out of here?
Yes, it's been changed.
I didn't see it, so I just wanted to make sure.
Okay. Any other? Right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Discuss, consider parks and recreation capital projects.
Yeah, so last meeting or a couple meetings ago, we asked with youth sports here, can we come up with a capital item list for your approval? Going back, we had conversations with the youth sports. They didn't really like the fees that they're going to pay, and their, critique about it was, hey, we're doing so much stuff to the field. We're doing X, Y, and Z. Why should we pay the fields? And it's like, that's fair, but you're also putting the most wear and tear on the field. So how can we build that kind of a better collaborative relationship? And out of that conversation, it really became, hey, let's kind of create that hybrid Parks and Rec department, get a little less hybrid, years down the road. So I'm not saying we're going to be a full Parks and Rec department in 2 years. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, hey, let's start taking a little bit more ownership of it. They have been doing a lot of work on our fields, which is wonderful. And I'm very appreciative and thank you. But it's also our field. So we should be taking a little bit more ownership of our field. And so through asking them, what did they do? This is my recommendations based on this. I'll go down the list of the items, but off the top of our head, only one item is from our capital budget. So it'll have a net neutral impact on the capital budget, and all the rest is from our park improvement fund. So we will have absolutely no budget impact on our general fund budget. So we have the monies available now to be able to do this. So the first item is an aerator. The aerator was recommended by the U Sports. They spend a lot of money aerating the fields. We have an equipment. We have the budget in our capital budget to be able to purchase something that goes on the back of our bench track to be able to do that. So our kind of, the big ask from them was, hey, with seeding. So, because they do a lot of that work. Well, it's our field. Let's take ownership of that. So our bench track would now do that work. Jim kind of came up with the idea or talked to him originally.
One of the things with sports turfs, one of the big problems is compaction. So one of the ways to relieve compaction is coordination, which I don't know if anybody's ever had that done their lawns. But that's where they pull cores of soil out to help relieve compaction, gives the root system more space spread out and thicken them on up. The problem with that when you're dealing with soccer fields is when you pour aerate, you got all those cores laying on top of the ground and impedes the play of the soccer field. So then when you have soccer in spring and fall, you have to aerate during the summer, which isn't the best time to aerate because then you're drying the soil out. This aerator does the same thing without pulling cores. It uses a method of where these tines go underground. They kind of flex like this and it fluffs up the soil, which loosens the soil, helps the root system, like not pulling any cores, which is gonna impede the play of the soccer field.
So
Have they been done?
Soccer's done.
Soccer club does it.
We've done that before. We go up and we've been working with the school on it. We've done it before. They use our 550 where they get chips and all their stuff. So we've worked with the school on that.
So you had,
We have done this stuff before.
and you guys have an
And if
area.
they have a 3-point hitch, we have the tractor they'll fit on. And if it doesn't, we use their tractor. They have like, it's either an 8 or a 9-foot one.
So you guys have the
We
equipment.
have worked with their, they have all the plugger and they have the other one for their,
It's one that pulls cores.
they have both, 2 different types. So we've worked with them before, we've worked with them on other stuff. It's like, why use money then you don't have to? Let's work with the school. That's my opinion on some of this stuff. And I get all the other stuff there, but let's work with them. They've always talked about, hey, we gotta sort of work together. We don't need to spend it if you don't have to. Work with them. That's the way I look at it.
How often does it need to be done?
They do usually
Just once a year?
Yeah.
a couple times a year if you truly care. And that's the reason why you don't do it with the school district, because we need to do it when we need to do it and we can't rely on them to do it, and also our seeds. And so
$1,000.
we already have it budgeted though in our capital budget. The truck came under budget. So we've already technically approved those funds. That's why it's a no budget impact.
Right, I understand that.
But if we can use the
If we
schools,
can use the schools,
Well,
why would
take
we
out of
spend
that $10,000?
$10,000?
Ownership of our own fields. It's our field. We need to be able to do it when we need to be able to do it. I can't rely on somebody else's equipment. They may say no.
have we had that issue with the school?
No, we've worked with them.
And that's might not always be the case.
This is also slightly different, from my understanding from what the school has, in that this penetrates the ground, it vibrates slightly, which helps loosen the soil. And it can also, for price estimates, roughly $3,000, we can attach a seeder to it. So we can seed it at the same time as we're doing this. It doesn't kick up the cores, so it's not going to obstruct people playing. And also consider the expanding parks that we're looking at in the coming years. I mean, we're going to have more and more to do. And I think it's best in our long-term interest, and especially to also to foster our growing relationship with youth sports and make that happen. It's a relatively small capital investment, but I think this is a look to the future of what we want to do here.
The school's not in session in the summer when we would be using it.
We're not supposed to do it in the summer. Isn't that what you said, Jim? That's not the best time to do it?
it's hot.
Yeah.
It's gonna dry the soil out. Have to make
Water the
the
grounds.
system more heat.
So when is it? It's done in the springtime? When do you guys do it?
Spring or fall.
You do it spring and late and fall. When soccer is that?
You can't do it during the season, so.
I just question too, if something happens to the school stuff, are we responsible then?
I'm all for sharing equipment and don't think that way. And I think a better relationship with the school is definitely on that. We want that. But also, as Drew mentioned, we're establishing our own Parks and Rec department. This is a request from them to be able to build that goodwill from us being able to do it. Also, if it's ours and there are volunteers, there's volunteers, like the youth sports people, could use this equipment on their own time. And that's what's great about the volunteer aspect of it. If it's not our equipment, I'm not wanting anybody to use it. And so if we're talking long-term investments into our Parks and Rec department, you're gonna have to buy one. You buy it now when there's no budget impact, or do you wait years later, there is a budget impact?
Is it rentable from someplace? Rent it once a year when we need it?
Not, maybe, but once you have to do that a ton of times, I'd rather just own it. That way we have the equipment on hand. And also our seed, because if somebody uses it with a different seed, maybe it's not a seed that we want, maybe they put something in it that's not good for our field.
It would all get emptied out. That would all get emptied out.
It doesn't get cleaned.
Are we gonna have room to store this?
It's relatively small item.
Okay, I didn't know.
How much money are we talking about here?
$10,000.
No,
$10,000?
$3,000 for cedar, no, we're looking at 13.
No, it's in
So that includes it.
The 10,000 includes the seed.
Cedar.
Cedar.
Which is not what the school has. My understanding.
The system's working now. I don't think we need to.
It's not working though. That's, I think, part of the problem. Is why
We
you.
having issues with that?
You guys make your decision. I just put my input in.
I'm asking for your input. Are we having problems using it from the school now?
No, I could make a phone call now and we could use it in 5 minutes.
And I say we hang on to our $10,000.
Why are we looking at one for the vent track versus the 3-point hitch like they're using now?
Because this is the equipment that would work well with it. We have the attachments. That's why.
Well, I just heard that vent track's not very good, so.
Where did you hear that from?
I've heard that it's slow and they can't even use it in the park.
I've heard none of that.
there again, if you order the 3-point hitch on the tractor, that same thing that schools got, then use schools. And those fields hadn't been aerated as far as I know for about the last time soccer did it. I heard was 3 or 4 years ago. So it's not getting done regularly.
So it's not that big of a necessity, obviously. If it hasn't been done, I would assume that the sports clubs would be like, hey, this is a priority. We need to do this friggin' fall. I can't justify
Have you seen soccer?
spending $10,000 on something we're only
Yeah,
gonna
let
use
them
once a
donate
year.
somebody towards it.
Yeah.
But that's where we're not building the relationship with them.
You're not,
But we still have a resource. We have it available to
Not what we
us.
want to do, though. What we have from the school is half of what we need to do. It doesn't do the seating. It also doesn't do the core thing that we wanted to do. That's the picture that is getting missed here. It does half of what we want.
Well, and I understand that, and I understand we're trying to build a relationship with the sports clubs. I just think there's other ways to do that without taking, I can't wrap my head around it. I can't in good faith spend $10,000 for something we're only gonna use once a year.
But we're expanding parks too.
well,
But none of those parks are planned for soccer or football. They're just
You would do
small.
it for every open grass area that you can for a playground or park space. You would do it for all of community park. You would do it for Blaser Park, Library Park, our 2 parks on the west side. Like,
in air fields. So what is the expected lifetime of this piece of equipment?
Bradley, what do you think?
Because buying it now with the anticipation of, our expanding parks, well, that's several years out.
So
So,
put it with the vent tracks. in 10 to 15 years reliably, maybe longer. I think it'd probably be depreciated over 10, 15 years.
Okay.
Is there much maintenance that has to be done on this? To help the longevity last longer, if it does or doesn't?
Cleaning it out, it's been, when it's done used, washing it down.
Sister, thank you, dear.
The additional parts, it's probably a large portion of it's probably gonna happen sooner rather than later. But I mean, how long it takes us to develop that and anything usable, I have no idea. But we'll probably get upwards of 50 acres of park in the next year or two.
What'd you say, Ian?
We're gonna get about 50 acres of park in the next.
He needs to speak up is what she's saying.
Sorry.
Yeah, we'll probably get upwards of 50 acres worth of parkland in the next year or two. But
So maybe we only use it for one field, but that's 75 acres twice a year. It's a lot.
The other thing, Library Park last year after, what's the event?
Brotherly love.
Well, because of the land, the north side of that park is trash right now. And if we had this machine last year, we could have ran it through there in the fall, loosen the soil, seeded, and we'd have seed coming up right now.
So who's gonna do this, Eric?
Public Works, they would just follow behind the track.
Do we have enough people in Public Works to get all this done?
That's a question, and I think that's part of the why it's an hybrid public parks and rec department is the youth sports, if there are, they would be not liable for anything, so be like our staff doing it, so youth sports members have agreed that they would be happy to do that type of work too,
With our equipment.
with our equipment. Which is kind of why
So if
it's a
it breaks,
hybrid.
who's liable?
The village, it's like a village employee doing it.
So the other thing, if we use the school's equipment, somebody has to run that. It's kind of a wash.
And that means the village employee has to do that if it's at school.
Part of the deal that we've been working just in general philosophical terms with the sports groups to try to get to the end result of a genuine Parks and Rec program here is we know that they can supply labor and labor is very expensive for us. We can supply capital. And so this is just part of that picture. If we can get their flexibility to help find things, and to some extent we can buy things. And I think this is just an example of falling in with that philosophy.
I think I kind of agree that it goes a long ways with the future goal of a Parks and Rec department. If that's something that we can actually work to. That doesn't mean, that if the Parks and Recs department never actually materializes, that this money's wasted either. I mean, it's a piece of equipment that we can use to maintain all of our parks. To the point of Library Park after the car shows in there. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of compacting of the dirt there.
If you go to Parks and Rec department, if you go to the Parks and Rec committee meeting on Wednesday, the concept of Sugar River Park, the entire field that's across from Union Road is about to be soccer fields, baseball fields, professional sports fields. We're gonna have to do this exact same thing over there, now doubled all of our fields.
I would question if it's large enough to do all that then, but.
Ashley, did you get to ask your question?
Yes.
It's to do a baseball diamond right, it's about 300,000 with everything that you need.
So equipment exceeds this with.
Everyone's trying to be.
And it's,
I'd say no.
what they view as the village is we don't care about our parks. So it's my job for PR wise. If you don't do it, a potential view is going to be, hey, they didn't care. Let them just,
Any of them here?
they didn't need to be. They've come to many committee meetings and I worked with them on this.
Come Wednesday night if you want, I guarantee you. So
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, and they will be the ones, I'm sure. But that's kind of the biggest thing is why are we charging fees when we've never cared about this? And if we say, no, we're not gonna buy an equipment that takes care of our parks on something that they've desperately asked for, this is now saying, nope, sorry, you've asked for this, but we don't really care. And that's not how I'm saying you guys are feeling, but it is definitely could be a perception. And that's what we're trying to bridge.
Right.
And so it's my job to tell you what could be done. But I'm gonna move on and we can talk about that too later, but equipment wise, more of the capital items, bases, field paint, flags, equipment, balls, more paint for soccer. So those are all equipment expenses that we can pay for that has useful life. And then field maintenance. We should be doing all this field maintenance, our fields. They shouldn't be maintaining our fields. We should be maintaining our fields. And so this is what they spend every year on field maintenance. And so this is gonna be taken up by us. And then next year, either off capital into our operating budget. So, yeah. So my recommendation was to authorize $22,683 to be spent out of the park improvement fund and $10,000 to be spent out of the capital fund. But the alternative is you can choose which items you want to purchase instead of the entire amount. So you do have that flexibility. But yeah, it's my recommendation to do it all while we have the funds to be able to do it and the equipment to be able to do it. And a willing parks volunteers that are willing to do the work now. We buy this equipment later, they may be like, yeah, no, sorry, we're pissed us off, we're not doing this anymore.
So we've got a tractor that pulls this.
It's a Ventrac, it's right now it's single wheels, but it can be dual wheels, and so it's what mows library parks, it does all of our slopes at our water retention ponds. So we do have an equipment that.
Because you're saying that soccer clubs, whatever, have people to work, they're gonna do this?
They could, yes, we may be able to do it and have staff time, but if we don't, soccer or baseball, they've all agreed that, hey, we will help pitch in to be able to help do some of this work too.
Okay, so
we'll buy the paint, they're gonna paint the fields.
If one of them are operating this and something happens, now whose dime is it?
It's the village, just like it would be a village employee. Because they volunteered.
And if somebody gets hurt running it?
Our insurance.
Operational immunity.
And
Kind of training's involved to educate someone on how to use the Ventrac and the attachment.
Couple hours.
Watch a YouTube video.
Yeah.
Hey, you must do it.
Sure.
Yeah, probably.
I get it. I wholeheartedly understand why you're concerned about the $10,000. I get that. That is a realistic, valid fear. The only reason why I'm pushing it hard is this youth sports really asked how can we help? And this would really help us.
This is like top of their list.
This was their list. This was their ask. And so if we say, yeah, that's like, when we can't afford it, it doesn't impact us debt wise because we've already taken out that debt. And so, or already authorized the usage of that debt. We haven't taken it. Authorized usage. That's why it's like. So I don't know about the complaint of the Ventrac that doesn't work. That has never reached my desk.
So I'm gonna make a motion. to Authorize $22,683 to be spent out of the park improvement fund and $10,000 out of the capital fund improvement fund for park and recreation capital requests.
Second.
I think when you write off for it, so.
Motion by Gary, second by Deb. To approve of the Parks and Recreation capital projects. It's the money out of park improvement and capital improvement funds as designated in the memo. Any other discussion?
Now, is that to buy the aerator or is
That's
that?
for
Put
all.
everything on the list.
Everything.
List.
Whole list.
I like everything else.
Jim, would they be using this in diamonds then as well?
The demonstrations I've seen, they were able to take an aerator across a baseball infield that had standing water, and by breaking that clay, shoot it out that way.
Okay.
Which we do
So-
have a problem.
We'll have one conversation at a time.
Balls, maintenance.
You wanted to say something?
I wasn't sure who all was there, the night of the parks when they came in, the people that do all the volunteer work with the soccer field and stuff. But they did point out how many thousands of dollars every day that they put, or every season that they put in. I think it's well worth it, in my opinion, to at least start the process and see where it goes. It is a big chunk, but honestly, I'm not a sports person, but I love seeing the people and the kids happy, and we do have parks, and I have heard the same comment, we don't take care of them, but I mean, absolutely nothing against the parks people. I know you guys have a lot to do, you do it. To the common person that doesn't pay enough attention, doesn't look like it, because they're used to these pristine ones up in Madison that have those funds.
Thank you. And Tony asked a really good question too. Can you put this on a baseball diamond? Yes. When it's really wet, if you punch these holes into it and shake it up, all that water, standing water goes away, and that is a major issue in some of our fields right now.
And did I hear a comment down there about the community club, Debbie?
I was just wondering if community clubs and different, schools and different things use the parks, could they make a donation towards this?
The community club donated $110,000 lunch stand in Sugar River Park not too many years ago, so.
That's what I'm just asking, because I don't know.
Okay, so we got a motion. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I oppose.
I'll abstain.
I abstain. Okay, thank you.
I abstained.
That's a pass on a 5-1-1.
Wait, before we move on, how soon will this all be implemented? I mean, like, soccer is going on right now, football starts soon, and baseball.
And they've all agreed already to do the fees. They've all paid, and they, due to their willingness for us to be able to bring this up to you, was their willingness to pay. And for their goodwill as they've paid, I believe.
So this will,
Pretty sure.
next year,
We would start.
more or less, or well,
The balls and everything can be paid for, like,
All these items will be paid for now. I will work with Ellers and Ian and Drew to figure out how we do it in the operating budget. Is it capital? How do we push it over the few years? Because we do need to start taking care of it. But like the paint, we're gonna buy the paint, they're gonna do the paint, stuff like that. Is that what your question?
kind of, yes, but I was thinking more like baseball already started.
Yep.
If baseball needs new bases, I'm wondering how soon we can.
So some of these
start
items
getting
are
them.
actually reimbursements. So they have bought some of it. So like some of the paint, some of the, baseball bases and baseballs, they have bought. And so these are, recent. So we would pay them back.
Okay, that I'm totally fine with. Totally fine with. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, like all the field maintenance, they've already paid for that.
Okay.
So this is now a reimbursement to that.
Okay.
For us to cover.
All right. Discuss, consider the Belleville Economic Growth Grant.
So this should be the easiest thing. So this is a touch up from the Economic Development and Tourism Committee. We budgeted $10,000 for grants in this last year's budget. So that's in the CDA. Right now it says grants, but I'm wanting to recommend half of that being spent out of this economic expansion and attraction. So what this grant does is for a new business coming in or a business expanding. It's not for understanding. Tony really wants to open a pet store. He doesn't have a pet store already. Sorry, Tony, like this grant isn't for you. But Debbie already has 3 restaurants throughout Madison and wants to open a fourth one here. That is what we're hoping to get because we already know it's a proven business record. It's not a new business that we don't know if it's tried and true yet. This is for businesses that already exist that we feel confident can do work here, or it's federal or Duluth that says, hey, we want to expand by 10,000 square feet, help us. So we already know their business model works. They must be doing well because they want to expand. So what I'm really seeing is like the Hop Garden would have taken advantage of this. They already have 3 stores. They're going to come in. And federal, that's why I use federal. Like, the eligible project costs are pretty liberal. Land and building acquisition, building renovations, capital improvements, engineering planning costs, new employee training, relocation expenses, signage. Like this is for them to say, hey, we're coming to Belleville, can you help us? So like I said, we have $10,000 already in our budget. $5,000 is what I'm recommending will be for the facade grant that already currently exists, and $5,000 will be set aside for the economic attraction. The EDC, TC would be your decision makers. They're the ones who, once you approve it, they'll come through me and I'll recommend it to the EDC for say.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the Belleville Economic Growth Grant.
Second. Sorry, did we cut you off?
No,
So you're essentially taking $5,000 away from the facade grant to.
And the reason why I feel comfortable with that is we only had one last year. It came in like November, December, and we gave 7,500 because it was at the end of the year. CDA felt comfortable with that. We have not had much usage of that over the last 3 years. Since I've been here, we've only had one person use it. Now, if we have a lot of people wanting to use it, that's great. And if we have a ton of people and you authorize this grant, there's $5,000 to the side. But if we have other people that come in, the EDC, all they have to do is come back to you and say, hey, we have 6 people interested. We don't have enough funds. Can we have more funds? Your answer could be sure, here's how we would fund it, or sorry, no, but please apply back in January. And if that's going on, then I know to budget more next year. So that's why I feel comfortable splitting it. I've been here the last 3-4 years. We've had that's
Just a little hesitant for, I'd like to encourage the, beautification of Main Street some, specifically those facades.
And facade isn't just Main Street.
I know.
Any commercial. And I agree, like, next year, we maybe just budget one line item is the growth grant, one item is facade. And if we run out and the CDA needs to spend 7,500, I will come back to board approval and say, hey, are you okay with that?
We're already in the bank. I don't think there's gonna be.
So being that it's for existing businesses, does that mean if you have one location, you're existing yet? So even if it's not in Belleville.
And that's totally fine. That's why it's attraction or expansion. Like Hop Garden, for example, it already has a location. It's tried and true. They're coming here, they want to do great. But again, with my example with Tony, we don't know if the customers that we don't know if their business model works. I don't like using tester money on something that just so much. Where if there's already current business model, already current locations, I'm more comfortable. Obviously, there's a risk, but it's less of a risk. And preferably, if we have 2, one's a village current owner and one's wanting to come in, and he wants to make that decision. And maybe you make that recommendation. Village business is first priority. Just the decision making on ECU. Yeah, I think there's really a no-lose situation. It helps. It shows that, hey, we are business friendly, current businesses and future businesses. We want to help you come here. Yeah, it's small, but it's better than we have nothing.
Okay. Any other discussion? We have a motion to approve the Belleville Economic Growth Grant. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, and that's it for new business. Reports from boards, commissions, committees, economic development, tourism. Gabe.
Yeah, so the Economic Development Committee is partnered with UW Extension to kind of go through a process to figure out, in lack of better words, what does Belleville want to be when it grows up? Before we start spending a lot of money on marketing, because you guys set aside money to do economic development. Great. But who are we trying to attract? What is Belleville trying to be? This is going to answer, what are our assets? Who do we have? What is that vision for Belleville? And then how do we attract things? So, for example, are we wanting to be the place where bachelor parties and bachelor parties come? If we do, we have some work to do. Are we trying to be that nature community that they come here, rent a kayak from Kelly Hickman's group in the summer, come here, go to the Johnny O's for dinner, or Llama for breakfast, go to the yards, go home? Probably. Are they going to travel right through Belleville on their way using Badger State Trails, come here for lunch? But for a weekend getaway, probably not. And so who we are, what are we trying to do, and then using that money to start attracting? If we're going to go after the nature group, great. There's advertisements we can use for that. So trying to figure out where we want to be and how we want to do it. And so we've hired UW Extension for free to come in and start doing this process. There's 8 to 10 of us that are in this subgroup, and we're meeting the fourth Monday of the month at 5:30. And it's only till September, and then those recommendations will be done at the EDC meeting, and then those recommendations will come to you after that. But it started small, and then we will start bringing more people in. Then we'll start advertising to get a lot of people to buy in. So I think it'll really be a good initiative. For example, I kind of did a similar thing in Wanakee. And what we did in Wanakee was, hey, like, we're that place where people come and bring their boats. And I kind of stopped and I said, what do you mean? I'm like, no, the mom coming from Stoughton is going to want to go up north. They're not going to want to go 10 minutes out of their way into Wanakee. That's not what's going on. But you have going on is you have a lot of rich people who have a boat that have their boat and leave and then come back at the end of the day. They're not coming here with their boat just to go back up. That's not what's happening. So it's for us to be more realistic on who we are and what we want to be, because I don't want us to spend money on marketing for bachelorette parties. And so I'm trying to just figure out using that money wisely and figure out what does Belleville want to do. That's what these are answering.
Public Works.
We pretty much took care of everything that we've talked about the last 2 meetings, so.
Oh, way to go. Economic Development Tourism Committee.
Really didn't have much of anything.
Introduction to the new committee members. We have a very whole new committee, which is great. We had a lot of people step out just because they've been on there for years. And now we have a very fresh face, which is wonderful, and a lot of new businesses that want to get more involved. So I feel really good. One of the other grants that we're working on is actually a loan pool that will partner with the banks that we have no financial stake, but a Belleville business can get a better loan because they're a Belleville business. And so we're trying that. Banks have to have some kind of civic responsibility to them. And so how can we tap into their statutory requirements to get our businesses better loan interest or better rate of return or whatever? So we're working on that. And then advertising, and we're also looking at banners from Main Street and kind of create that cohesive look as we're going through the welcome signs and park signs, creating that cohesive. Kind of beautify a little bit.
And arts and culture.
So did we find somebody to prime?
Yeah,
Well,
we're closer. We're not totally there yet, but we're closer.
We have a company that came out and looked at it and told me that, yes, they'd be interested. I'm still waiting for a quote.
Okay.
I mean, that was just Friday.
Yeah.
Okay. So we are getting close.
We're gonna have
Mural, I should say, is getting closer.
Power washings tomorrow, so.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna knock on wood and I say the mural's probably gonna stay on track he's supposed to be here on the 19th to start painting it. So we're looking forward to that. The chalk walk event will be happening on the 31st, which will not only include the debut of the mural, but also the library park will be open for the kids. We've got a bunch of chalk. They'll get to draw to their little heart's content. And then we're gonna have a kind of like a contest for people. They can purchase a square here on the main street and do their own artwork. And then we're running kind of a contest and we have a couple volunteers heading that special event up for us. You guys approved it last time we were here. So that one's right underway. We've got some signage out. So tell all your friends to come out and hopefully pray for good weather so that it's not raining. If it's raining buckets, we'll be sad. But hopefully it'll be sunny and nice and we can all draw on the sidewalk with chalk.
That still apply. I remember when I was a kid, when you wrote on wet concrete or asphalt with chalk, it like made it permanent. Or it stayed for a long time.
It did stay, didn't it? We
Yeah.
just aged ourselves by.
Yep, I'm old.
Otherwise,
Might have played with chalk at some point.
or ate it.
Weird as you.
It's non-toxic now. We're okay.
All right.
And then we also started talking about UFO days.
All right. News and announcements.
Wednesday night at 5 is going to be the organizational meeting for the Lake Belleville Sugar River Ad Hoc Committee to determine how we're going to spend the bequeathment funds. So if anybody wants to show up, that'll be before the Parks meeting. Here. 5 o'clock.
Community events.
The fire department fish boil is coming up soon, 17th. And then of course the chalk walk, which I will vote again.
And then June 7th is Cops and Bobbers.
Cops and Bobbers.
Page 20 at the ZF House and Drawing.
Season.
Great. To adjourn?
No.
Close.
No.
Yeah, we're not out of here yet.
Okay.
A lot of fun left, yeah.
Closed session.
He's gotta read the
Gotta
stuff.
read the stuff.
I'm sorry, guys.
All right. Village of Belleville Board will enter into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.85 subsection 1 subsection E for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified business. Whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, the village board may reconvene into open session and take action on the subject matter discussed in closed session. We've got 2 items we're discussing tonight. Discuss consider next steps regarding 130 South Vine Street and consider establish negotiation position regarding the purchase of commercial property in tax increment district number 3. And then, do I have to read this again for this other one?
Really sorry.
And then the Village of Belleville Board will enter into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.85 subsection 1 subsection C for the purposes of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, for the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. The village board may reconvene in open session to take action on the subject matter discussed in that closed session. And this item is to discuss and consider the village mechanic position.
Oh, make a motion to go into closed session.
All right. We'll roll call the trustee Bainan,
Yes.
trustee Bongard, Yes, I'm gonna, is that a yes? One second. Okay, trustee Eichelkraut,
Yes.
trustee Kazmar,
Yes.
trustee Ward,
Yes.
trustee Ziegler, president Zerbis.
Yes.
All right, we are in closed session at 8:35 PM.
I saw 4 future Kevin Ward replacements here.
Really?
That wasn't
I make a motion to adjourn.
I know. Second to turn the stuff on.
If you don't have any motions, you have to, so.
That one you don't have to mess with.
What's that?
You don't have to mess.
Oh, I
Make a motion directing Kevin to do the Alta surveys.
Oh.
It's to cover your bases. We don't need any.
So, that's MSA, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Make a motion that we have MSA perform the Alta surveys and the phase one environmental study for the TID property purchase.
Second.
Pretty. Okay.
Favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
You may.
Make a motion to adjourn. Second.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Here.
Adjourned.
Adjourned at 9:03.